The first livestock trailer was already back to the loading chute when Tom Mercer noticed the old gray donkey standing beside the gate. She was smaller than the others. A pale scar ran down her left hind leg, and when she turned, she favored it just enough for Tom to smile. "You're not taking that one," he said. The buyer did not smile back. He looked past Tom toward the Whitaker Ranch, where 3 more trailers waited along the gravel road. Ranchers from across the county stood beside their pickups, watching 7 donkeys move calmly between portable panels. Above the gate hung a rough wooden sign painted in fading red letters. Donkey Ranch. Tom had paid 2 boys to make that sign as a joke. Now a buyer had driven nearly 600 miles to stand beneath it. The buyer pointed toward the scarred gray donkey. "What does she do?" Sarah Whitaker closed the sorting gate behind her. "She hears them first." "The coyotes?" Sarah nodded. "How often is she wrong?" "Twice in 14 months. The buyer studied the animal, then looked at the binders resting on the hood of Sarah's truck. "Load her first." Tom's smile disappeared. "That animal is old?" he said. "And she's half lame." The buyer turned toward him. "I'm not buying legs." The county went quiet. He tapped one of Sarah's binders. "I'm buying warning time." Then he looked at Sarah. "I want everyone." No one along that road understood why a Montana cattle company would drive past dozens of closer ranches to buy 7 ordinary donkeys. They did not know why the buyer wanted the oldest animal first, and they did not yet understand what Sarah had built while the entire county was laughing. Because the coyotes had not vanished from Wyoming, they had simply learned there was one ranch they no longer wanted to enter. Sarah Whitaker had not planned to become the woman people whispered about at the feed store. Before her husband, Daniel, died, the Whitaker place had been an ordinary eastern Wyoming cattle ranch. 260 acres, 85 Angus cross cows, 1 aging tractor, 1 hired hand during hay season, and a mortgage that was manageable as long as the calves lived long enough to be sold. Daniel handled the night checks during calving season. Sarah kept the books, worked the cattle beside him, and knew every pasture gate by the sound its chain made in the wind. They were not wealthy, but the ranch paid its bills. Then Daniel's truck slid from an icy county road. After the funeral, Sarah discovered how much work one person had quietly been doing. She could feed the cows. She could pull a calf. She could repair wire. What she could not do was be in 3 pastures at once after dark. The first winter alone, coyotes took 2 newborn calves. The following spring, they took 4 more. 6 calves did not sound like much to men who ran 500 cows. To Sarah, 6 calves represented the interest payment due in July. She priced livestock guardian dogs. A trained pair cost more than she had available, and keeping several large dogs fed year-round would add another bill she could not ignore. She asked about hiring a night hand during calving. The answer was worse. At the livestock auction in Mill Creek, Sarah heard an older sheepman named Walter Green mention that he was retiring. Walter had used donkeys around sheep for years. Not all of them worked. He warned her. Some ignored coyotes. Some chased calves. Some bonded with each other and forgot the livestock entirely. But the right Jenny, properly placed and observed, could make a coyote reconsider a pasture. Walter had 8 donkeys left, 5 jennies, 2 geldings, 1 old gray jenny named May, whose leg had been cut by wire years earlier. The animals were uneven in size, dull-coated from winter, and worth little at a cattle auction. Walter wanted $3,800 for all 8. Sarah had $4,200 in the ranch emergency account. She stared at the animals through the auction pen. Tom Mercer walked up beside her. Tom owned more than 1,200 acres east of Mill Creek. He was president of the County Cattlemen's Association, served on the Agricultural Lending Board, and sold some of the best replacement heifers in the region. He had also known Daniel since high school. That history made his voice sound almost fatherly when he spoke. "Don't do it?" Sarah kept watching the donkeys. "Walter used them. Walter raised sheep. He said they worked. Tom rested both arms on the rail. Sarah, those aren't protection. They're feed bills with long ears. Two ranchers behind him laughed. Sarah said nothing. Tom lowered his voice. You need cattle income, not 8 pasture ornaments. Walter entered the ring with the old gray Jenny. May walked slowly, but her ears moved toward every sound, the auctioneer's microphone, the steel gate, a dog barking behind the barn. Sarah noticed that before she noticed the limp, the bidding opened at $2,000. No one raised a hand. The auctioneer looked around. Whole group. Folks. 8 head. Tom called out. Throw in a saddle and maybe somebody can start a birthday business. Laughter rolled across the bleachers. Sarah lifted her bidder card. The room quieted for half a second. Then someone laughed louder. Tom turned toward her. You're serious? The auctioneer took her bid. No one challenged it. Sarah bought all 8 for $3,200. By the time she signed the receipt, half the room was calling her the donkey woman. At the county fair 2 weeks later, the laughter followed her. Sarah had brought 2 replacement heifers to sell. The livestock superintendent pointed her toward a pen near the children's animal area. One of Tom's men looked at the donkeys tied beside Sarah's trailer and said, They put you near the petting zoo. At least they got the section right. A few ranchers laughed. Tom stood close enough to hear. He looked at the brightly painted sign over the children's enclosure. Then at Sarah. Maybe next year they'll give you your own attraction. Sarah did not answer. She unloaded the heifers, checked their water, and completed the sale. But when she returned to her truck, she found a paper cup balanced on the hood. Someone had written, Donkey Queen, across it in black marker. She crushed the cup and threw it away. That evening, 2 boys on bicycles followed her trailer for almost a mile, braying loudly whenever a car passed. The next morning, she found a wooden sign nailed beside her front gate. Donkey Ranch. The letters were painted bright red. Underneath, someone had added, Calves enter at their own risk. Sarah stood in the road looking at it. She knew who had arranged it. Tom's foreman had been drinking with 2 young ranch hands the previous night. They had stopped at the diner and told anyone who would listen that Sarah had turned Daniel Whitaker's cattle place into a petting zoo. Sarah pulled the sign from the post. For a moment, she considered splitting it over her knee. Instead, she carried it into the barn and leaned it against the wall. She did not know why she kept it. Maybe because destroying it would not make the laughter disappear. The donkeys arrived that afternoon. Within 20 minutes, one gelding pushed through a weak section of panel. Another kicked over a mineral tub. 3 ran toward the south fence when they saw the cows, while May stood alone beside the trailer, refusing to move. Sarah spent 2 hours getting all 8 into the same pasture. By sunset, she was exhausted. By midnight, they had separated into 2 groups and were braying across the ranch. The cows would not approach them. The calves ran whenever the donkeys moved. From the county road, a pickup slowed. Someone leaned out the window and shouted, "How's the security team?" The truck drove away before Sarah could see who was inside. She looked across the pasture at 8 confused animals, standing apart from 85 confused cows. For the first time, she wondered whether Tom had been right. But the escape problem was only the beginning. Sarah made the mistake that inexperienced owners often made. She assumed instinct would organize what she had purchased. She turned all 8 donkeys into the main calving pasture and waited for them to become guards. Instead, the donkeys formed their own group near the hay feeder. They followed one another. They slept near one another. And when the cows moved toward the creek, the donkeys often remained behind. May watched everything. But the younger animals watched May. They were a donkey herd. They were not part of the cattle herd. Sarah tried moving their feed closer to the cows. The cattle pushed them away. She tried separating 2 donkeys with a group of heifers. The donkeys paced the fence and called to the others. She tried placing the gelding buck near the calving shed. Buck chased a young cow so hard that she broke through a panel. Sarah repaired the gate in freezing wind, while Tom Mercer watched from his pickup on the road. He lowered the window. "Need a guard donkey to protect you from the other guard donkey?" Sarah kept winding wire. Tom waited for a reply. When none came, he said, "Daniel knew cattle. You don't have to prove anything by doing the opposite." That sentence stayed with her. It was no longer a joke about the animals. It was a judgment about her. At the spring cattlemen's meeting, Tom made it public. The association was discussing predator losses and the possibility of organizing a county trapping program. Tom stood near the coffee urn, describing how his ranch used riders, lights, and 2 trained dogs around the heifers. A rancher asked Sarah whether the donkeys had helped. Before she could answer, Tom said, "The coyotes haven't complained." The room laughed. Sarah looked toward him. Tom shrugged, just telling it straight. Then he faced the room again. "A person can own livestock. That doesn't make the person a rancher." The laughter faded. A member of the local agricultural lending board stood near the back wall. He glanced toward Sarah, then toward Tom. Sarah noticed. Tom was not merely embarrassing her in front of neighbors. He was saying those words in front of people whose opinions could shape whether her ranch received another year of credit. Walter Green, sitting at the back, lowered his coffee cup. Sarah gathered her papers and left before the meeting ended. 3 nights later, she heard a cow bawling near the east draw. Sarah pulled on her boots and ran outside with a rifle and flashlight. The beam caught 2 coyotes slipping through the sagebrush. The cows were scattered. The donkeys stood together near the water tank. Bit dumb. Sarah found 3 calves missing. One was never recovered. The remains of the other 2 lay beyond the fence. She sat in the frozen grass beside the smallest calf. Its yellow ear tag was still clean. Number 214. Born 11 hours earlier. Sarah had written its weight in her calving book before going inside for coffee. 72 pounds. Strong nursing response. Healthy dam. Now the calf was a number with a line drawn through it. That afternoon, she called the bank. Her operating loan was already near its limit. The loan officer, Mr. Dougherty, did not threaten her. He did something worse. He spoke carefully. "If your weaning numbers drop again, we may need to discuss reducing exposure." What does that mean? It means selling part of the cow herd before winter. Selling how much? Possibly 30 head. 30 cows would reduce the feed bill. It would also reduce the next calf crop enough that rebuilding might take years. When Sarah hung up, she opened the ranch ledger. Feed, fuel, veterinary expenses, fence materials, auction cost for 8 donkeys. Nothing on the page suggested she had purchased protection. That evening, Tom arrived with a livestock trailer. He did not come empty-handed. He placed a cashier's check on Sarah's kitchen table. $2,000. "I'll haul them away," he said. "All 8? Walter still knows people. Maybe they'll find homes." Sarah looked at the check. "You called them worthless?" "I'm trying to help. At half what I paid. They're worth less now than when you bought them. Everybody knows they failed." Sarah looked through the window toward the pasture. May stood apart from the other donkeys. Facing the east draw, Tom followed her eyes. "Your husband built a cattle ranch," he said. Sarah did not move. Tom continued, "You're turning it into a roadside attraction." The kitchen became very quiet. He could have stopped there. He did not. Daniel spent 20 years putting his name on good cattle. Men trusted that name before they saw the animals. Sarah looked toward the coat hanging near the back door. It was Daniel's old canvas work coat. She had never moved it. Tom's voice hardened. He would be ashamed to see people laughing at this place. Sarah looked back at him. The check remained between them. Tom mistook her silence for weakness. He would have sold those donkeys the first night they cost him a calf. Sarah slowly pushed the check back across the table. "Take it." Tom's face tightened. "Pride won't make the payment. Neither will $2,000. I'm giving you a clean way out." "No." You're buying a joke cheaply enough to tell it twice. Tom picked up the check. Then don't say nobody tried to help. After he left, Sarah stood alone in the kitchen. The room still held his words. Daniel would be ashamed. Sarah looked again at the canvas coat. One sleeve was folded under itself, the way Daniel always left it. She reached toward it, then stopped. She did not cry. Instead, she went to the barn. She intended to find Walter's sale papers so she could call him in the morning. The wooden Donkey Ranch sign still leaned against the wall. Behind it sat one of Daniel's old metal cash boxes. Sarah pulled the box into the light. Inside were cattle receipts, vaccination notes, breeding records, and the small pocket notebooks Daniel carried during calving season. Most of the pages contained ordinary observations. Cow 63 favored left front. Heifer 18 nervous near dogs. Move salt west after creek freezes. Then Sarah found several pages from the year Daniel had helped Walter during lambing. One sentence had been underlined twice. An animal reacts. A working group develops a routine. Below it, Daniel had written, May hears coyotes before the dogs. Keep her with stock, not with other donkeys. Sarah read the sentence again. Maya, the old gray Jenny standing in Sarah's pasture, was the same animal Daniel had observed years earlier. Tom had used Daniel's memory as a weapon, but Daniel's own notebook told a different story. He had not dismissed May. He had paid attention to her. Sarah closed her eyes. For the first time since Tom left, she allowed herself one unsteady breath. Then she opened a clean page. The notebook did not contain a miracle. It contained a correction. Sarah had bought 8 animals. She had expected them to become one working system. Daniel's note suggested the opposite. May needed to bond with livestock, not disappear into a group of donkeys. The following morning, Sarah called Walter. He listened without interrupting while she described the losses. When she finished, he said, How many did you put together? All 8. Walter Sahil. You made them feel safe? That was the point. No. You made them feel safe with each other. Sarah looked out the window. So what do I do? You stop thinking 8 donkeys means 8 guards. What does it mean? It means you have 8 job applicants. Sarah did not answer. Walter continued. Some will work. Some won't. Some will herd a calf. Some will ignore everything outside their feed pan. Daniel wrote about May. May worked because she stayed with sheep. Your husband noticed that. Can she do it again? Maybe. That isn't an answer. It's the only honest one. Sarah leaned against the kitchen counter. Walter's voice softened. A clue isn't a program. Sarah. And owning animals isn't the same as building something another ranch can trust. What would you test first? Whether they choose the cattle when the other donkeys are out of sight. That afternoon, Sarah removed May from the group. The old Jenny called for the others until dark. For 3 days, she paced the fence. On the 4th morning, she stood beside a cow with a newborn calf. Not close, but closer than she had stood before. Sarah opened a new notebook. On the first page, she wrote, 8 animals, 0 proven guards. Then she began recording everything. Sarah divided the ranch into smaller working areas. She could not afford permanent fencing. So she used portable electric netting, steel panels, and old woven wire repaired one section at a time. May went into the north, calving pasture with 14 cows. Buck, the aggressive gelding, went into an empty lot for observation. 2 younger Jennies, Rosie and June, were placed separately with small groups of dry cows before being tested around calves. Sarah recorded where each donkey slept, how close it stayed to cattle, whether it reacted to dogs, whether it chased calves, whether it approached a strange sound or moved away. Most nights, she slept in 2-hour pieces. May's first real test came when a ranch dog belonging to a neighbor slipped under the south fence. The dog was not hunting. It was young and curious. But May did not know that. She lowered her head, ran toward it, and struck the ground with both front feet. The dog turned before May reached it. She chased it to the fence, then returned to the cows. Sarah wrote the time in her notebook. 11:43 at night. Response began at approximately 120 yards. Returned to cattle in 4 minutes. No calf chasing. It was not proof that May could stop a coyote. But it was the first useful thing any donkey had done. Rosie failed, her first test. When Sarah introduced her to a cow with a week-old calf, Rosie pinned her ears and chased the calf along the fence. Sarah removed her immediately. Walter had warned her that not every donkey was suitable. Sarah did not excuse the behavior because she needed Rosie to work. Rosie spent the next 3 months with mature cows and no young calves. Buck failed permanently. He attacked a stock dog through a panel, then turned and kicked at a heifer that approached his feed. Sarah sold him to a man who used donkeys for packing in rough country. She lost $400 on the sale. At the feed store, Tom heard about it. So the security team is downsizing, he said. Sarah lifted 2 mineral sacks onto her cart. One didn't fit the job. Tom smiled. 7 more discoveries to go. Sarah pushed the cart past him. She had learned not to defend unfinished work. By midsummer, 3 donkeys had shown useful behavior. May gave the earliest warnings. June remained closest to the cattle. A brown gelding called Scout investigated movement but did not chase calves. Sarah began using a metal triangle hung beside the calving shed. 1 strike meant feed. 2 strikes meant move through the sorting gate. The donkeys learned the sound before the cattle did. At first, moving 3 donkeys and a group of cows into the night pen took 58 minutes. Then 41. Then 26. Sarah recorded every attempt. She practiced when there was no emergency, so she would not be teaching during one. The county saw only the odd parts. They saw Sarah leading donkeys with a feed bucket. They saw portable panels appear in different pastures. They heard the metal triangle after sunset. At the diner, someone called it donkey school. Tom repeated the phrase at a cattleman's breakfast. Sarah's running classes now, he said. Maybe the cows will graduate. A few men laughed. Walter, sitting across from him, did not. Tom looked at the old sheepman. You think this makes sense? Walter stirred his coffee. I think she's measuring more than most people. Measuring donkeys. Still more than most people. The answer irritated Tom because it did not sound like praise, but it denied him the agreement he expected. By autumn, Sarah had enough records to see patterns. May alerted earliest but moved slowly. Scout responded fastest after May brayed. June remained with the cattle instead of joining the chase. They were not interchangeable. Each performed a different role. Sarah stopped thinking of them as 8 versions of the same animal. She began thinking in functions. Warning, pressure, herd anchoring, calm movement. 2 donkeys were removed from guard work entirely. One became a companion animal for a neighbor's old mare. Another was sold to Walter's nephew. 5 remained on the Whitaker ranch. May, Scout, June, Rosie, and a younger Jenny named Pearl. Rosie eventually stopped chasing calves. But Sarah did not trust a single calm week. She required 3 months of safe behavior before moving Rosie into a small calving group. Walter visited one cold morning and watched Sarah separate the animals. You've got fewer donkeys, he said. I've got more information. That's usually how it works. He walked past the portable panels and looked at May. The gray Jenny stood beside 3 cows. Ears aimed toward the east draw. Walter pointed with his chin. She still knows. Daniel wrote that she did. Daniel paid attention. Sarah closed the gate. Attention doesn't pay the bank. No. Walter examined the records clipped to a board inside the shed. But it keeps you from lying to yourself. The second calving season began with less snow and more wind. Coyotes were active along the draws. Sarah's first calves arrived in February. For 11 nights. Nothing happened. On the 12th night, May brayed at 2:16 inches the morning. Sarah woke immediately. The sound was different from ordinary calling. Short. Harsh. Repeated. She pulled on her coat and looked at the monitor connected to the infrared camera. Two bright shapes moved beyond the fence. Coyotes. Scout ran toward the movement. June remained near the cows. May advanced several yards. Stopped and brayed again. The coyotes did not enter the pasture. They moved along the fence for 6 minutes, then disappeared into the draw. Sarah did not claim victory. She wrote down the time, the wind direction, the location, the response of each donkey. 3 nights later, the coyotes returned from the north. Scout chased one along the fence. May held near the center. Again, no calf was lost. By the end of the first month, Sarah had recorded 7 predator approaches. No successful attacks. In the second month, 9 approaches. No successful attacks. Tom called it a quiet year. Then his ranch lost 5 calves in 12 days. He increased night patrols and hired a trapper. Sarah did not mention it. She knew predator pressure changed from pasture to pasture. One ranch's loss did not prove another ranch's method, but other people began noticing. A small cattle producer named Ben Hollis asked whether Sarah would place 2 donkeys with 23 first calf heifers on leased ground. Sarah refused at first. They're not machines. I know. They might fail. I know that too. Then why ask? Ben looked tired. I lost 4 calves last spring. I can't afford dogs. And nobody wants to check that lease every night. Sarah agreed to a 30-day test. She placed Scout and June on the property. She inspected the fencing herself. She required Ben to remove his dogs from the pasture and report every unusual event. The donkeys spent 4 days pacing the boundary. On the 5th day, they began feeding near the heifers. During the 30-day period, Ben's trail camera recorded 3 coyotes approaching the pasture. Twice. Scout moved toward them. Once. June brayed, and both donkeys advanced. No calves were lost. Ben paid Sarah $900 for the trial and asked to extend it through the end of calving. $900 did not save the Whitaker Ranch, but it was the first time the donkeys produced income instead of consuming it. More importantly, another ranch had trusted the system and received a measurable result. When Tom heard, he laughed at the feed store. You rented him 2 donkeys? Sarah signed the receipt for fencing staples. I rented him a tested pair. You renamed feeding animals and started sending invoices. Ben renewed. The coyotes may not have shown up. 3 were recorded. Tom paused. Then he said, "One little job doesn't make a business." Sarah folded the receipt. No. She looked at him. But it makes proof. Proof created a new problem. Sarah now had something that might work, but not enough money to expand it safely. The bank would not lend against unproven guard donkeys. The ranch still depended on cattle income, and Sarah's portable fencing was wearing out faster than she could replace it. She sold Daniel's old 3/4-ton pickup. It had more than 200,000 miles. A cracked dashboard and a driver's door that needed to be lifted before it would close. She had kept it because it still smelled faintly of his leather gloves and coffee. The buyer handed her $12,000. Sarah stood in the driveway after the truck left. For the first time since Daniel's death, the empty space beside the barn looked permanent. She used the money for fencing, 2 more infrared cameras, a livestock scale, and repairs to the old trailer. At the next cattlemen's meeting, Tom heard about the sale. You sold Daniel's truck for donkey equipment? For ranch equipment? Same difference now, I suppose. Sarah kept writing notes. Tom leaned closer. Daniel worked 20 years to build a cattle name. You're spending it on animals people give away. The men nearest them stopped talking. Tom had moved beyond teasing. He was insulting the meaning of her marriage and the ranch she was trying to preserve. Sarah closed her notebook. Daniel wrote about May before you knew her name. Tom's expression changed slightly. Sarah stood. He watched what worked. She walked out before he could answer. That winter, Tom purchased 4 large donkeys from 3 different sellers. He told people the animals were superior because they were younger, heavier, and cost nearly twice what Sarah had paid. He posted photographs online under the name Mercer Predator Control Program. The county laughed again, but this time, some of the laughter was aimed at Tom's sudden interest. Tom said the market had changed. Sarah said nothing. His donkeys looked impressive. They were tall, well-fed and clean. But Tom placed all four together with the heifers. They remained together. When a coyote crossed one pasture, the donkeys chased it. Then they continued chasing one another and left the cattle behind. One gelding injured a newborn calf. Tom removed the animal and blamed the seller. He bought expensive motion lights, then more cameras, then another donkey. He had purchased equipment. He had purchased animals. He had not purchased time. At the feed store, Tom told people the problem was bloodline. At the diner, he said Sarah had simply gotten lucky with Walter's old stock. He never once opened a notebook to measure where his own animals slept, which ones stayed with cattle, or how long they took to return after a chase. His failure grew directly from the thing he had mocked in Sarah. He believed size looked like value. He believed money could replace observation. He believed the animal was the product. Sarah knew the product was the routine. Her own program continued slowly. As the lease work expanded, 5 experienced animals were no longer enough to protect Sarah's cattle, serve outside clients, and help her test whether the routine could be repeated. She reinvested the fees from Ben's lease and the next 2 placements in 4 young jennies from a retiring 4-H breeder: Hazel, Clover, Nell, and Fern. Sarah did not call any of them guards. Across the top of each new record, she wrote the same word: unproven. Hazel and Clover proved calm around panels, trailers, and newborn calves. They accepted new handling routines and could move with a working pair. But Sarah had not yet cleared either one to lead an independent placement. Nell and Fern were earlier in the process. They still called for each other when separated and had never spent a full calving season with cattle. Sarah kept their records separate: 5 active workers, 2 support animals, 2 unproven candidates. For the first time, and the numbers in her pasture matched the numbers in her business plan. During the next calving season, her cameras recorded 21 coyote approaches. The coyotes tested fence lines, followed draws, and sometimes remained outside the pasture for nearly an hour. But after several encounters with May's alarm and Scout's pursuit, the pattern changed. The cameras began recording coyotes turning away before reaching the calving areas. Tracks appeared along the outer boundary, but less often inside it. By spring, Sarah had gone an entire calving season without losing a calf to coyotes. Ben Hollis also completed his season without a predator loss. The following year, Sarah placed trained pairs on 2 more small ranches. One client lost no calves. Another lost 1 calf in a pasture where fencing failed and the donkeys had been accidentally shut away from the herd. Sarah included the failure in her records. She did not advertise 0 losses. She advertised documented behavior, placement protocols, and reduced predator access when the system was used correctly. That honesty mattered later. The call came from a man named Aaron Cole, operations manager for North Range Cattle Company in Montana. North Range had acquired grazing rights on more than 10,000 acres, divided among several remote calving units. Their former predator control contractor had withdrawn 6 weeks before the first heifers were scheduled to arrive. Aaron had tried trained dogs. 2 local suppliers could provide animals, but neither could provide complete records or prove how their stock behaved around newborn calves. Another seller had 20 donkeys available. When Aaron asked how many had worked alone with cattle, the seller did not know. Aaron found Sarah through Ben Hollis, whose cousin worked seasonally for North Range. He called on a Tuesday evening. "Mrs. Whitaker?" "Yes." "I'm looking for guard donkeys." "How many pastures?" There was a pause. Most sellers began with price. 4 calving units. Aaron said, "Size, between 60 and 100 cows each. Existing fencing, mixed. Some woven wire, some high tensile, some temporary. Dogs on the property, working dogs. Yes, they can be restricted. Timeline, 31 days? Sarah looked through the kitchen window at May, standing near the north pasture. You don't have 31 days. I'm aware of that. How many donkeys have you used before? None. Then you need more than animals. That's what Ben said. Aaron explained the situation. North Range did not expect donkeys to eliminate coyotes or replace all predator control. They needed animals that could integrate with cattle quickly, respond predictably, and work as part of a larger prevention plan. The company wanted to purchase a functioning group and pay for Sarah to help establish the program. Aaron had searched closer. One herd lacked health documentation. Another included intact jacks unsuitable for the operation. A third seller could not separate animals without several hours of chasing. North Range's insurance carrier required health records, temperament documentation, and a written operating protocol. Sarah had all three. How far are you? She asked. 584 miles. That's a long drive for donkeys. I'm not driving yet. What happens first? I inspect your records. Sarah emailed 43 pages. Health history, Hofcare, vaccination, temperament notes, pasture placement, recorded alerts, known failures, calf contact observations, loading times, pairing recommendations. Aaron called the next morning. You included the injured calf from the Hollis lease. Yes. Even though the donkeys were shut in the wrong field. Yes. That wasn't your system failing. It was the operating plan failing. The calf did not care whose fault it was. Aaron was quiet. Then he said, I'll be there Friday. The county learned about the inspection before Aaron arrived. The banker mentioned an out-of-state livestock buyer during lunch. The feed store clerk heard North Range was looking for donkeys. By Thursday afternoon, Tom Mercer knew nearly everything except the proposed price. He drove to Sarah's ranch and stopped beneath the old Donkey Ranch sign. Sarah had rehung it over the gate months earlier. Not as surrender. As identification. Tom stepped out of his truck. He's coming for 5 donkeys? He's coming to inspect. What's he offering? That depends on what he sees. Tom leaned against the hood. I have younger animals. I know. Larger too. I've seen them. He should inspect mine. Call him. Tom's jaw tightened. You gave him my name? No. Why not? He asked for documented working animals. I own working animals. Sarah looked at him. Tom waited. She did not argue. Her silence made the answer clear. That evening, a windstorm moved across the plains. The temperature dropped. Dust and dry grass struck the windows. Adzeche, patruzechi. One of Sarah's fence alarms sounded. She drove to the north pasture and found a cottonwood limb across a section of woven wire. The fence sagged nearly to the ground. Pearl and Rosie had crossed into the adjoining lane. May remained with the cattle. Scout paced the damaged boundary. Sarah worked under truck lights for 3 hours. But the frozen ground would not hold a replacement post. She secured the opening with portable panels. At dam, May's old leg injury had stiffened. The Jenny could walk. But her limp was obvious. Aaron Cole's inspection began in 4 hours. Sarah had 2 choices. She could postpone, or she could let the buyer see the system after a real failure. She called Aaron. The perimeter fence came down. Any animals loose? 2 crossed into the lane. None left the property. Injuries? 1 old leg is stiff. Can your inspections still happen? Yes. Then don't fix everything before I arrive. Sarah looked at the temporary panels. Why? I want to see what happens when the plan fails. Aaron arrived in a white pickup with North Range's cattle manager and a veterinarian. Tom's truck was parked across the road. 2 other ranchers had found reasons to stop nearby. Sarah met the inspection team at the gate. She did not begin with the successful season. She showed them the fallen limb. She showed them where Pearl and Rosie had crossed. She showed them the temporary repair. Then she showed them May's leg. She has an old wire scar. Sarah said, the cold makes her stiff. She is sound in warm weather. But she should not be used for long pursuit. Aaron watched May walk. Then why keep her? She hears movement before the others. She gives the group warning time, and she works the smallest pasture where she doesn't have to cover long ground. What does that mean operationally? It means Scout doesn't begin chasing blind, and I can move the cattle before a threat reaches them. The veterinarian examined May. No acute injury. No swelling. No heat. Aaron opened a clipboard. Show us the animals without arranging them for us. Sarah led them to the calving pasture. May noticed the strangers first. Her ears locked forward. Scout moved several steps toward the fence. June stayed beside the cattle. Pearl approached Sarah when she struck the metal triangle once. Hazel and Clover waited in the adjoining training lane. Calm, but attentive. Nell and Fern called from a separate pen when the working group moved out of sight. Sarah did not apologize for the noise. Their records said they were unproven, and their behavior proved the records honest. Aaron checked random ear tags against the records. Every tag matched. He asked for vaccination dates. Sarah answered from memory, then opened the binder to verify herself. He asked which animal had the highest false alert rate. Pearl? How high? 6 alerts not confirmed by camera or tracks. Why keep her? She is improving, and she loads calmly. But she does not lead an independent pair yet. Aaron selected Scout and June for a separation test. Sarah moved them through portable panels into a smaller enclosure. Scout became anxious when he lost sight of May. Sarah struck the triangle twice. June turned toward the gate. Scout followed. They loaded into the trailer in 14 minutes. Aaron said nothing. They unloaded. Sarah moved May and Rosie next. May refused the trailer ramp. Tom, watching from the road, smiled. Aaron checked his watch. Sarah did not pull harder. She changed the panel angle, narrowed the visual opening and brought June near the trailer. May saw June step inside. She followed. 22 minutes. Slower than the documented average, but no chasing. No ropes around legs. No frightened animal striking panels. Aaron looked at the cattle manager. Local seller took 90 minutes for 3. The manager nodded. Tom heard him. His smile faded. The veterinarian completed health checks. Aaron reviewed the failure records. 1 donkey removed for aggression. 1 unsuccessful placement. 1 calf injured after a management error. 2 false starts with bonded pairs. Nothing had been hidden. At sunset, Aaron asked the question Sarah had expected. Can we see predator response? No. Why not? I can show you recordings. I cannot order a coyote into the pasture. What can you demonstrate? Alarm response. Regrouping. Movement to the night pen. Sarah asked the cattle manager to walk along the outside fence with a leashed dog. The dog remained under control. May detected it before it came into view. She brayed once. Scout moved toward the sound. June remained with the cattle. Pearl circled behind them. Rosie positioned herself near the youngest calves. The response was not dramatic. No animal attacked. No dust cloud rose. But the group formed the same pattern shown in Sarah's records. Aaron watched for 8 minutes. Then he asked the dog handler to retreat. Scout followed the fence briefly. Stopped and returned to the cattle. How long did that take? Aaron asked. 6 minutes. Sarah said. The cattle manager checked his watch. 5:48. Aaron closed the binder. Tom walked across the road. I've got 5 donkeys 10 miles from here. He said, you ought to compare before you make a decision. Aaron looked toward him. Are they health documented? Yes. Paired by behavior. They're donkeys. Aaron waited. Tom added, they'll chase coyotes. Do they stay with cattle? They're in the cattle pasture. That wasn't my question. Tom's face reddened. They're younger than hers. Aaron looked at May. Age is not the first thing I'm buying. What are you buying? Aaron pointed toward the pasture. Predictability. Tom folded his arms. Mine are bigger. Then you own bigger donkeys. The ranchers near the road stopped talking. One of them, the same man who had laughed at the auction, stepped forward. Why not inspect Tom's herd too? He's got good stock. Aaron looked at him. Because Mr. Mercer showed me animals. Then, he nodded toward Sarah's records. She showed me outcomes. No one laughed. Aaron continued. You do not own the same product. Tom looked at Sarah as though she had arranged the sentence. She had not. That was what made it hurt. The truth came from a man who had no history with either of them. Aaron asked Sarah to meet him at the kitchen table. North Range wanted all 5 active working donkeys. It also wanted Hazel and Clover. The 2 support animals Sarah used for calm handling and training new stock. When Aaron named Rosie separately, Sarah frowned. Rosie should not lead a pursuit pair. She won't. What will she do? She'll stay in the smallest heifer lot. She doesn't give the earliest alarm. She doesn't need to. She cannot replace May or Scout. I understand. Sarah looked at him. Then why buy her? Aaron opened the behavioral chart. Your records show that new animals settle faster when paired near her. She is calm. She is part of the routine. Yes. That is why. Finally, he asked about May. The gray Jenny stood outside the kitchen window, facing the east draw. She is the oldest. Sarah said. How much time does she have? I don't know. Can she travel? The veterinarian cleared her. Then she goes first. Aaron offered $68,000 for the complete transfer. The livestock line valued the 7 transferable donkeys at $24,500. $15,500 covered the documented operating procedures, training records, queue system, and portable panel plan. The remaining $28,000 paid for Sarah to establish the program across 4 Montana calving units and provide 6 months of consulting support. Sarah had expected less than half. She read every line. North Range was not paying for donkey weight. It was paying for documented selection, failed experiments, tested pairings, trained cues, and the months required to establish predictable behavior. Sarah looked up from the contract. What about replacement animals? We want you to build the next group. That takes time. That is what we are buying. Aaron placed his pen on the table. I can buy donkeys closer to home. He tapped the records. I cannot buy 2 years closer to home. Sarah signed. North Range returned with 4 livestock trailers. By then, nearly everyone in Mill Creek had heard. Pickups lined the county road. Some people came because they admired Sarah. Some came because they did not believe the sale was real. Others came because public reversals attract the same people who enjoy public humiliation. The old Donkey Ranch sign hung above the gate. No one laughed at it now. Tom Mercer stood near the first trailer. The old gray Jenny stood beside the gate, looking toward the cows. Her scarred hind leg was stiff in the morning cold, but her ears continued moving toward every sound along the draw. Sarah approached her but did not pull the lead rope. Tom stepped closer. That old thing might not work another season. Aaron looked at him. She worked before your animals knew their pasture. Tom's face tightened. I'm saying she's old. And I'm saying she built the pattern. Aaron turned to the men standing along the road. I did not drive 584 miles because these donkeys are rare. No one moved. I came to Yandot. I came because this rancher can show me what each animal does. When it fails. How it recovers, and where it belongs. He looked back at Tom. Your animals may be larger? Then he pointed toward Sarah's binders. But size is not training. Aaron looked at Sarah. Load her first. Sarah struck the metal triangle once. May lifted her head. Twice. May turned toward the trailer. May put one hoof on the trailer ramp. The county watched. A year earlier, those same men had laughed when Sarah led donkeys through portable panels. They had called it donkey school. They had said she was feeding pasture ornaments. They had said Daniel would have sold them. Now May stepped fully into the empty trailer. June and Pearl followed her inside. Aaron closed the gate. I came to buy time, he said. He secured the latch, and I want every year she put into them. Scout entered the second trailer after one strike of the metal triangle. Hazel and Clover entered the third together. Exactly as Sarah's pairing sheet predicted, Rosie approached the fourth trailer calmly but stopped at the ramp. Aaron turned toward Sarah. Which animal settles new pairs? Rosie. Give her time. Rosie watched the cattle for several seconds, then stepped inside without being pulled. The trailers pulled away one at a time. They passed the feed store. They passed the bank. They passed the county fairgrounds where Sarah had been placed beside the petting zoo. They passed the cattlemen's meeting hall where Tom once said that owning livestock did not make Sarah a rancher. No one repeated the joke. That night, one of Sarah's remaining cameras recorded movement near the east boundary. A coyote emerged from the draw. It approached the outer pasture, stopped, raised its nose toward the wind, then turned and followed the fence away from the ranch. The animal had not left the county. It had learned the boundary. Selling the trained group gave Sarah enough money to reduce the operating loan and keep the cow herd intact. But the pasture felt empty. For 2 years, May's Bray had been part of the ranch. Now the nights were quiet. Nell and Fern, the two unproven young Jennies, remained in the training pen. Sarah began building again with them. She started again with records, again with separation, again with slow introductions. North Range called every week during the first month. The 7 donkeys settled into 4 calving units. May remained in the smallest pasture, where warning mattered more than long pursuit. Scout and June formed the most mobile pair. Rosie stayed with Hazel among the first calf heifers. Pearl and Clover worked the most enclosed unit under extra camera checks. Neither was treated as an independent lead. North Range recorded fewer predator entries than it had during the previous season. Not 0 coyotes. Not a miracle. A measurable reduction supported by fencing. 2. Observation and animals, selected for specific roles. Tom Mercer arrived at Sarah's ranch one afternoon, carrying a notebook. He stood beneath the donkey ranch sign. Sarah walked out of the barn. Tom looked toward Nell and Fern in the training pen. I need help. Sarah waited. My donkeys chase, he said. Then they stay away from the cattle too long. You grouped them before they bonded with stock. I know that now. Tom looked at the notebook in his hand. What do you charge? The question mattered. He did not ask for a favor based on Daniel. He did not offer to buy her animals cheaply. He asked the price of her knowledge. Sarah named the same consulting rate she charged North Range. Adjusted for local travel. Tom nodded. Then he looked at the sign. I shouldn't have put that there. No. I thought you were throwing away the ranch. So did I for a while. Tom looked surprised. Sarah opened the gate. You were right that the first system failed. I wasn't right about everything else. No. Tom looked toward the barn. I had no right to use Daniel's name. Sarah did not answer immediately. He wrote about May. She said, I know. You told me he would have been ashamed. Tom lowered his eyes. I was wrong. Sarah handed him a blank observation sheet. She did not forgive him with a speech. She did not punish him with one either. What happens first? Tom asked. You stop calling all of them guards? Tom looked at the young Jennies. What do I call them? Unproven. He wrote the word down. Sarah could have returned the humiliation. Instead, she required what she required from everyone: honest records, safe handling and payment for professional work. Tom followed the same rules as every other client. That was not forgiveness. It was recognition that the knowledge he had mocked now had a price. Over the next 3 years, Sarah helped 6 small ranches test guard donkeys. Not every animal passed. Some were sold for riding, packing, or companionship. 1 was removed for aggression. 2 never bonded with cattle. Sarah recorded those outcomes too. She taught ranchers that donkeys were not a magical answer. They required sound fencing, careful selection, and safe management around dogs and newborn livestock. Coyotes adapted. The ranchers had to adapt too. North Range purchased Sarah's second trained group before it was complete, with delivery scheduled only after every animal met the written standards. Ben Hollis stopped losing calves on his leased pasture. Walter Green attended Sarah's first county workshop and sat in the back row. When she finished, he walked toward the gate and touched the wooden sign. "You kept it," he said. Sarah looked up at the faded red letters. "I almost broke it." "Why didn't you?" "Didn't want them thinking they could decide what it meant forever." Walter smiled. The sign had begun as an insult. Then it became a name. Sarah eventually moved it inside the training barn. Beneath it, she placed Daniel's notebook in a glass front cabinet. The page remained open to the sentence he had underlined. An animal reacts. A working group develops a routine. Below it, Sarah added a sentence of her own. A routine becomes valuable when someone can trust it without trusting your promises. Visitors often came expecting to hear a story about extraordinary donkeys. Sarah corrected them. They were ordinary animals. She said, "Some were useful. Some were not." "What made the difference?" they asked. Sarah usually pointed toward the records. But sometimes, when younger ranchers were listening, she pointed toward the old sign. Everybody else decided what they were before the work started. Then she looked across the pasture, where a young Jenny stood between a newborn calf and the open prairie. "You don't answer that kind of judgment by talking louder." The Jenny lifted her head toward a distant sound. "You answer it by becoming useful enough that the truth no longer needs your help." That was how the Whitaker place remained, the donkey ranch. Not because the county's joke had survived, because Sarah had changed its meaning. The coyotes never truly disappeared. But from Sarah Whitaker's pastures, the missing calves did, so did the laughter.